Are you ready for a blues story beyond the music? The king of the blues, B.B. King, left behind 15 children, and their lives turned out to be as soulful and complicated as any blues ballad. Some followed in his musical footsteps, others faced trials and troubles, and a few ended up in bitter feuds that shocked fans. This is the untold story of B.B. King's family, from the highs of carrying on his legacy to the lows of courtroom dramas and personal struggles. Stick around because the twists in this family's journey will surprise you and prove that the blues runs in their blood. Number 14, Shirley King, born 1949. Shirley Ann King is B.B. King's eldest surviving child, often introduced as the daughter of the blues. Growing up in West Memphis, Arkansas, Shirley didn't fully realize who her father was until she was a little girl. She was around 3 years old when she first became aware her dad was a famous blues man. As the oldest, Shirley often helped care for her younger siblings. She jokes about having a baby under each arm back then. In her 20s, she struck out on her own path. Surprisingly, Shirley spent over 2 decades as a professional dancer in Chicago's nightlife scene, even performing as an exotic dancer in the 1970s, with B.B.'s cautious blessing, before eventually finding her way back to the blues. In the 1990s, inspired by her father's music, Shirley reinvented herself as a blues singer. She earned the nickname Daughter of the Blues for performing her father's style of music, and has released well-received albums in her own right. Her 2020 album, Blues for a King, even features duets with blues and rock legends, keeping her dad's legacy alive in song. Today, Shirley King tours internationally, belting out blues with a powerful voice and vibrant stage presence, just like her father taught her. In interviews, she often credits B.B. for teaching her how to conduct herself in the music business. She's proud to carry on his name, but also insists on being her own performer. I'm Shirley King, B.B. King's daughter, not just B.B. King's daughter. What's her name? She laughs, emphasizing that she's built an identity beyond just being the blues legend's kid. At around 75 years old now, Shirley remains an energetic entertainer who keeps the blues in the family. Note, little Barbara, the younger Barbara, sadly passed away some years ago. In B.B.'s autobiography dedication, he pointedly included both a big Barbara and a little Barbara, but by the time of his death, only Barbara Winfrey remained active in the family events. Number 13, Barbara King. B.B. King had 2 daughters named Barbara, affectionately distinguished by the family as Big Barbara and Little Barbara. The elder one is often identified as Barbara King Winfrey after her married name. Barbara, likely born in the early 1950s, has mostly stayed out of the spotlight during her life. She did not pursue an entertainment career or public persona. However, Barbara King Winfrey became prominent in the news after her father's death. She was one of the family members who challenged B.B. King's management over control of his estate. In May 2015, Barbara joined her sisters Patty, Karen, Rita, and Ruby in accusing B.B.'s business manager of misconduct and push for more, saying how their father's affairs were handled. This dispute became quite public and contentious. Barbara and her siblings alleged that millions of dollars were unaccounted for and that their father's trust was being mismanaged, although those claims were later addressed in court, mostly in the manager's favor. Through it all, Barbara has kept a respectful tone about her father. Aside from the estate issues, she has lived a private life. Number 12, Patty King. Patty, full name Patty Elizabeth King, was born in the 1950s and, unlike some of her older sisters, did not go into music. Patty's life took some difficult turns. She battled personal troubles, including a period of drug involvement that led to serious legal consequences. In fact, Patty King ended up serving time in prison for cocaine trafficking in her younger years, a painful chapter that B.B. quietly acknowledged. After paying her debt to society, Patty tried to rebuild her life. She spent a lot of time with her father in his final years, even acting as one of his caregivers in late 2014 when his health was failing. Patty's closeness to BB at the end, however, became part of the family drama. She and her half-sister, Karen Williams, grew suspicious of BB's business manager, Laverne Toney. And in April 2015, Patty and Karen even summoned an ambulance to BB's home against his wishes, fearing he wasn't being cared for. BB was upset by this, as he hated hospitals. After BB King's death, Patty was one of the most outspoken accusers, alleging that Toney had mistreated and even poisoned their father. These claims were investigated and found to be untrue, but they grabbed headlines. Court documents from that time paint Patty in a harsh light. At one point, the estate's lawyers described her as a multi-convicted felon who had pawned some of her father's belongings without permission. Patty denied any wrongdoing beyond her past mistakes, insisting she only wanted justice for her dad. Her efforts, along with her sisters, to remove the manager ultimately failed in court due to lack of evidence of abuse. It's clear Patty had a complicated relationship with her father. She loved him and cared for him, but also fought against those she thought hurt him. Today, Patty lives a much quieter life in Las Vegas. Number 11. Ruby Stein, Ruby Davis. Known simply as Ruby King to friends, this daughter inherited BB's charismatic smile, but has led a relatively private life. Ruby, whose given name is Ruby Stein, was born in the late 1950s. She did not pursue show business, and for many years little was reported about her, except that she was one of BB's beloved children. Ruby lived outside the spotlight until BB King's death, when she too stepped forward in the estate battle. In fact, Ruby Davis added her voice in support of her sister's legal challenge. She filed an affidavit joining Patty, Karen, Rita, and Barbara in questioning the actions of BB's manager. Ruby rarely spoke to the media, but by aligning with her sisters, she made it known she also wanted transparency about her father's finances and cause of death. Aside from that episode, Ruby has kept her personal life very low-key. She was present at her father's funeral services in May 2015. One photograph captured Ruby smiling through tears after the memorial, a bittersweet moment as the family said goodbye. Now in her mid-60s, Ruby Davis is thought to reside in Mississippi. She has largely avoided public attention since the estate matters were settled. Number 10. Rita Washington. Rita is another of BB King's daughters, born around the late 1950s. She too lived mostly out of the limelight, that is, until the family disagreement spilled into public view. Rita Washington emerged as one of the family board of children, as they called themselves, who challenged BB's appointed executor after his death. Rita joined her sisters in accusations of mismanagement, but she was also quick to clarify their motives. Dad died by himself. If it was his wish not to let us see him in that condition, she still could have allowed us to visit, Rita said about the manager, expressing how hurt she was at being kept from her father's bedside at the very end. She also insisted the fight wasn't about money. We're not trying to grab Daddy's money. We just want to know the truth. Rita's heartfelt plea showed the emotional pain behind the legal filings. Apart from this controversy, Rita has kept a very private profile. She did not have a public career or media presence before or after. Number 9. Michelle King. Michelle is one of BB King's daughters, about whom the public knows very little. She was likely born around the early 1960s. Throughout BB King's life, Michelle stayed entirely under the radar. She wasn't in show business, didn't give interviews, and wasn't noted in the post-2015 legal fray. In fact, Michelle's name seldom appears in news stories, suggesting she preferred to avoid the spotlight and any family disputes. It appears that Michelle may have lived a peaceful, private life, possibly outside of Las Vegas, where many of her siblings reside. If she had any involvement in her father's legacy, it was behind closed doors. By all accounts, Michelle did not participate in the estate challenges or media accusations after BB's passing. It's quite possible she grieved in private and stayed out of the infighting. Number 8. Claudette King. Claudette, born in the late 1960s, is the youngest daughter of B.B. King, and she has definitely inherited some of her father's musical talent. Often dubbed the Blues Queen, Claudette grew up in California, living a pretty normal life, far from the Delta, where her dad was a legend. In fact, her childhood friends didn't even believe who her father was. That's how ordinary her upbringing was, despite her extraordinary parentage. Still, music was in her blood. Claudette sang in church choirs and school glee clubs, and by the 1980s, she was occasionally joining her dad on stage for fun. It wasn't until later in life, the 1990s and 2000s, that Claudette decided to seriously pursue a singing career of her own. And when she did, she made waves. Claudette King has jammed with world-class musicians since the 80s and earned a reputation in blues circles for her fierce vocals. Rather than strictly copying BB's style, Claudette blends blues with soul and R&B influences, carving out her own identity and music. In 2010, she released an album, and by 2020, she was back with a new record titled We're On to Something, proudly saying she gets it from her daddy when it comes to talent. However, carrying the King name isn't always easy. Claudette has admitted that being B.B. King's daughter set a high bar for her. Whatever is expected of me has to be beyond great. My music has to be almost flawless because my father is a legend, she told Essence magazine. Despite the pressure, Claudette has embraced the challenge. She performs under her own name, often headlining blues festivals, and delighting audiences with a voice that reviewers describe as sassy, powerful, and full of heart, much like BB's guitar solos. Now, in her mid-50s, Claudette King continues to keep the blues alive for a new generation. Number 7. Rileta King Williams. Rileta was one of B.B. King's elder daughters and a key figure in the family for many years. Born in the 1950s, Rileta grew up during B.B.'s early fame. She was known to be a responsible, steady presence among the siblings. B.B. trusted Rileta deeply. In fact, he named her as the second-in-line executor of his estate, right after his longtime manager, in his will. This shows how much confidence he had in her. Sadly, Rileta passed away in September 2014, just 8 months before her father died. Her death came after a battle with health issues, not widely publicized, and it hit B.B. hard. If Rileta had lived, some say the posthumous family feud might not have been so chaotic. She might have been a peacemaker. During her life, Rileta largely stayed out of the public eye. She wasn't an entertainer. Instead, she focused on family. In fact, Rileta married and took the last name Williams, and at times is referred to as Rileta Mitchell in court documents, reflecting a marriage. She had children of her own, making B.B. a grandfather. One of her sons, Eric Mitchell, later tried to mediate the estate disputes as a neutral party. Rileta's passing was one of 4 deaths among B.B. King's children over the years. At B.B.'s funeral in 2015, she was dearly remembered. Family members say Rileta had a warm, no-nonsense personality and was often the one trying to keep the siblings united. It's poignant that B.B. outlived this daughter who meant so much to him. Rileta's memory undoubtedly lives on in the King family as a symbol of loyalty and love. Number 6. Karen Williams. Karen is one of B.B.'s younger daughters, born in the early 1960s. Out of all the children, Karen Williams became perhaps the most publicly visible, in the aftermath of BB's death, albeit reluctantly. Karen had a close but sometimes strained relationship with her father. In his final year, Karen and her sister Patty were the two who grew suspicious of BB's manager's treatment and famously attempted to intervene in his hospice care, as mentioned earlier. When those efforts failed, Karen took to the courts. She became the leading figure in the siblings' legal fight, filing petitions to remove Laverne Toney as guardian and, later, as executor. Karen voiced concerns that large sums of money, over $1 million, were missing, and that her father had been isolated against his wishes. These claims were covered widely in the media. A judge ultimately ruled against Karen's bid for guardianship while BB was alive, and after his passing, the will, naming the manager as executor, was upheld. This was no doubt a bitter outcome for her. Karen said, "My dad would never want this," expressing her sorrow that the family dispute had become so public and messy. Outside of this turmoil, Karen Williams has generally lived quietly. She did not have a showbiz career. She's a mother and reportedly involved in local community work in Las Vegas. Those close to Karen describe her as passionate and strong-willed, someone who stands up for what she believes is right. She felt compelled to stand up for her father, even if it meant clashing with his longtime associates. In recent years, Karen has stepped back from the spotlight again, as the estate matters have settled. She, like many of her siblings, has worked to repair familial relationships that were frayed by the courtroom battles. Number 5. Gloria King. Gloria is another of B.B. King's daughters, who maintained a very private life. Likely born in the early 1960s, Gloria never sought fame or media attention. She was not involved in the music industry. In fact, many fans only learned of Gloria's existence from BB's autobiography dedication or from occasional family lists and news articles. Gloria did not participate in the post-2015 legal disputes, nor did she speak to press about family matters. Instead, she has been described as one of the more reserved, low-profile King children. Number 4. Robert Bobby Edwards. Robert is one of B.B. King's sons. He is somewhat unique in this list because he doesn't carry the King last name publicly. The name Robert Edwards suggests he may have taken his mother's surname or perhaps was adopted by a stepfather. Born in the early to mid-1960s, Robert, sometimes called Bobby by the family, kept an extremely low profile throughout his life. He was never in the music business and is seldom mentioned in media. In BB's autobiography dedication, he's listed simply as Robert. During B.B. King's funeral events, Robert did not appear in news coverage, implying he prefers to grieve and remember in private. Number 3. Willie King. Willie is a son of B.B. King, named after BB's own father, Albert King, who is often nicknamed Willie, or possibly after one of BB's close friends. Willie King was born in the mid-1960s and grew up for a time in Chicago. Willie did not become a musician. Instead, he has led a fairly private life. However, Willie did step into public view briefly during the turbulence after his father's passing. Unlike some of his sisters, Willie did not join the accusations of poisoning or theft. In fact, he openly doubted those claims. In an interview at B.B. King's wake, Willie famously said, "There's always a rotten apple in the barrel. Sometimes out of hurt, you turn it into something it should not be." They attacked the wrong person, referring to how a couple of his sisters lashed out at the manager in anger and grief. Willie's measured, forgiving tone stood out. He defended his father's trusted assistant, essentially saying that his sisters were good people who let pain and anger get the best of them. This showed Willie as a peacemaker of sorts. Indeed, he was not a plaintiff in the court filings, although he was sympathetic to the idea of keeping the family informed. Willie attended the private family viewing of BB's body alongside his sisters before the public got to pay respects. Number 2. Leonard King. Leonard is another son of B.B. King, likely born in the 1960s. Among all 15 children, Leonard might be the most enigmatic. Very little public information exists about Leonard. He did not come forward during the estate battle and was not mentioned in news articles at all, which suggests that he too maintained a distance from the spotlight. It's possible Leonard is known by another name in his personal life, or simply chose to live entirely outside of his father's fame. B.B. King's obituary references did list a son named Leonard, confirming he was alive as of 2015. Number 1. Riley B. King, Jr., born in 1970. Last but not least is Riley King, Jr., B.B. King's youngest child, and his namesake, Riley Jr., is indeed the only one of B.B.'s children to carry his father's actual name. Being the baby of the family, Riley Jr. was doted on by B.B., but perhaps the generational gap. B.B. was already in his mid-40s by the time Riley Jr. was born, made their relationship unique. As a teenager and the young man, Riley Jr. faced serious challenges. He fell into trouble with the law and ended up incarcerated in Texas for a series of drug-related offenses and thefts. In fact, a court sentenced him to 18 years in prison, a staggering penalty that could have kept him locked up well into adulthood. This was an incredibly painful situation for B.B. King. The bluesman who had sung about hardship all his life suddenly had a very personal hardship to confront: his youngest son behind bars. B.B. did not abandon his son. Instead, he quietly used his resources and influence to help. After Riley Jr. had served about 5 years, B.B. King instructed his attorneys to push for an early release for his son. Thanks in part to B.B.'s intervention, Riley Jr. was released from prison much sooner than his full sentence, a testament to a father's love and the pull B.B. had. Free again, Riley Jr. tried to make a fresh start. He gave a few interviews around 2015, speaking at memorial events. He was a legend and loved by many, Riley Jr. said of his dad, adding that B.B. always treated people with love and respect. It's clear Riley Jr. admired his father deeply. Since then, Riley Jr. has kept a low profile. He and his wife were reportedly given one of B.B. King's cherished guitars as a symbolic gift, a piece of his musical legacy to hold on to. Now, in his early 50s, Riley B. King Jr. lives a private life in Alabama. He doesn't perform publicly, despite that musical name, but is said to enjoy playing guitar at home.